You got this and you got that, and you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know that I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Only Friends podcast.
What's the matter, Berk?
It's just like,
He's good.
Come
What?
on, bro. It's
What?
like,
What's the problem?
can we get an ounce of professionalism in here?
He looks great. He got his headphones on. He's
did
not,
take- he
he's
took-
not on his phone.
No blanket.
No
took the
blanket to
blanket
be
off.
seen anywhere.
The
No blanket. There is
second-
no blanket. None. No blanket.
The second Guapo said mics are hot.
No, I got unlucky there. I ran bad.
What do you mean?
I ran
Words
bad.
came out of his mouth, and then you go, holy shit, we're starting.
Yeah, I mean,
What's funny about that is that he reacted verbally to it. Like,
Right.
If he
He
didn't say anything,
literally always
no one would
does.
have noticed. He didn't react verbally.
There's no voice in his head. It's just like immediately it comes out.
We're a very transparent show. Okay,
We
we
are.
let everybody know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
true.
we make it obvious exactly how incompetent we are when
Yeah.
we fuck these
Right,
things
that's
we
up.
have
right.
that with the 5-minute countdown. You'll see us walk up here at 30 seconds left. And
It
by
makes us,
us, I mean
it makes
me.
us more real, you know.
That's what we tell ourselves.
I'm glad we didn't put
Keep
you
it
guys on
real.
the 5-minute countdown to get that hand history uploaded.
Oh man.
I don't think we would have made it. I think we would have just hit a flat line.
This is what
I
happens
know.
when you have really complicated hand histories with 5-way action and all sorts of shit going on.
That is true. We have a spicy one for you guys today whenever we do get into the strat chat.
Chat.
It was
Strat
good.
chat.
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 Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah, it was
you
fine.
doubted yourself. Which
I
made
did
it-
doubt myself. Well, look, man, I got a lot of doubt these days when it comes to my my understanding of the English language. I'm being challenged on what ecology means right now.
You're fighting wars on multiple fronts right now. You're fighting off all kinds of accusations.
We're not going to say you're fighting a good fight, but you're fighting
I'm fighting a fight.
a fight. Yeah.
Honestly, like I strongly considered not engaging. So for
you didn't.
Yeah,
for
you
the,
never,
I really
never
did.
once did you ever cross your mind to
really
not
did.
engage.
You guys have no idea how many tweets I deleted before I actually hit
Oh,
send.
we know, but you
have
still
no
hit
clue.
send.
But for everybody to get caught up with what's going on, Daniel the other day, and we're going to talk about this in the early part of the show of what percentage should be in the money. We kind of came to an agreement. We didn't come to an agreement. We were both in the same thread, kind of agreeing that 15% is just better for the overall ecosystem. But Daniel kept saying ecology. And I let it slide until he said something snide to me. And I don't even think he meant to be snide. He was just like, oh, look at that, buddy. We agree. And I was just like, just for the record, it's fucking ecosystem, not ecology, as the overseer of big words. And he accepted it. But now here we are 48 hours later, and he's posting a definition of both to my timeline. I just couldn't take it
I
anymore.
love that he's been stewing on it for like 2 days.
Right.
He's, he's been on dictionary.com for the last like 48 hours straight, just like trying to find a way to prove you're wrong.
The best part is like on sites you can inspect element and you can write text, so he can change the definition to whatever he wants it to be.
Oh,
Like
that's kind of
wow.
funny.
to get one over on
well,
you. He obviously didn't do it, but like he could have.
Even if you can't get one over on me, the root word of ecology is ology. It means study. Like there's just no getting around this one. I'm not like some rocket scientist knowing root.
You need this win so bad.
No, I don't need the win. Like that's the thing. This isn't a fucking win in any stretch. It's what it is to me, and I know that. I know
Look how
that.
happy you are.
Well, I think this is really funny. I just think this is like really like.
so happy.
I think it's very hilarious.
It's really funny because Daniel's doing the exact thing that people always accuse you of doing.
Exactly.
Which is digging in and never admitting that you're wrong or anything like that.
Right. Like 2 days later, I'm having definitions of, 5th grade words being posted to my timeline of somehow trying to make them interchangeable when they're not, which I find to be.
I was literally going to say you guys should just go to the spelling bee. You versus Daniel in high stakes spelling bee.
I would get crushed. I stink at spelling. I spell everything
kid.
phonetically. But what I find to be funny about this is that it's somehow like being debated, which, there's just clearly no debate here. And for me, this like demonstrates, I think, the crux of why Daniel and I had such a big blow up to begin with, is because, you know, like to even post the definition of ecology and ecosystem and somehow try to infer that they are interchangeable in some capacity is like thinking I'm so dumb that you could pull the wool over my eyes and just like, you know, move the goalpost in some capacity.
I don't think he wants a win. I think he wants like a half point.
Yeah, that I can totally.
You love half points.
Well, look, because like nobody uses the next closest word to what I actually meant more than me. I get it, man. I'm the king of bastardizing the English language. I will take two words that sound similar and smash them together and make them one all the time. So like, I totally understand that.
You were right about lambasted.
I don't even remember.
We had a conversation
Lambasted, lambasted.
You remember this?
No.
Wow, you forgot your own win.
I don't care about this stuff. Like, it's just funny in the moment.
Landon's been keeping a record of all your wins and
He does.
losses.
He's got a ledger. He's just like
It's like Ryan from The Office with a notepad.
Scoreboard.
I mean, that actually makes sense because it seems as though you're keeping quite the tally between you and Becker, as we saw with your tweet that you fired up last night.
It was late, man. It was 3 a.m. I was like, you know what? I got to fire the tweet out in time, but it might not hit.
So the backstory behind this.
So many captions went through my brain, you know?
Was it the roulette one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The backstory behind this, which is I'm finding to be quite humorous, is that him and Becker are basically just creating meme templates for one another to put these tweets out. So Landon bagged day 1A of the win 600 yesterday. Yeah. Okay. And Becker sent you that picture, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Becker just like gives them the layup of like, here's a picture of me.
Well, he was like, I'm
fit.
at the roulette table. If you want to come get the picture. And I was like, man, like we're break just ended.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, yo me one.
Right. So he just like sends him this, which is funny.
yeah.
And
honestly, this is going to be such a fun
Drink
few
in
months.
hand.
You two just sending each other memes and just like one-upping each other constantly in cooperation with each other. It's going to be great. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, part of it's like, I don't know how much, like, if it makes it better with or without context. Like, good example being the first one he posted with the MTC. He was like, oh, GG buddy, was not even a spot where he stacked me and people took like, oh shit, like he got him, like showers.
yeah, because it was a good meme.
Right. But like,
He's winning.
I know he's winning, but like, how much of the? I can give him a point.
Half point.
Well, actually, Daniel told him to tweet that. Like,
Half point to D-Negs. There you go. We've come full circle. He's gotten his half point.
because he was telling me like, because like Jermey and I are cool, but like at this end of the day, I think we both kind of view each other as like each other's best friend, as we now have this action.
Yeah.
Like for each other.
I was gonna say like
Right,
it's
yeah.
like a stepbrothers thing. It's like do we just become best friends?
Well, it's like I think that I'm winning against him and can win a bunch of money from it, and he thinks he's winning against me and he can win a bunch of money from it for the action that he took for the bigger bet. But mostly it's like I'm fighting the good fight here and he's fighting his good fight over there. So it's like, yeah, like because of you and Daniel, this has happened.
Right.
So why do we hate each other? Like, we don't hate each other.
Yeah.
And it's preseason, like I don't have to anti-sweat that hard yet.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Speaking of the bet, have you guys discussed the mystery bounty aspect of it at all?
Oh.
We haven't discussed it yet, but I think we both think that it should be in the bet.
Here's my take on it.
I think it's not close because there's strategy involved.
Right. That was my take.
It's not this whole, like when it comes to mystery bounties and like call it PKOs, because it's kind of the same idea.
I think it's similar to PKOs as well.
As there's a bounty pool.
Right.
There is legitimate strategy in like how you should construct pre-flop, how you can construct post-flop,
Right.
how you can construct pre-bubble, how you play hands when you're in the money for the bounties. Like there's a bunch of strategy that goes into this, which if someone is better at the other person, then they are able to get luckier than them by default.
Yeah. I mean,
I agree.
it's totally part of your EV. Like I had this conversation with Fausto a while back, and I think Fausto had a bit of a blind spot about it because he was like, "Oh, the bounties are all random, so what does it matter?" But it's like there's very specific strategic adjustments when there's additional EV coming from the fact that there's a bounty pool. Like you have to adapt to giving yourself the max chance of getting bounties at the right times.
Right, like it's essentially it's a lottery, but there's a strategic way to get more lottery tickets.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. There's very much a skill to bounty events, and
Right.
I don't think there's much of an argument for not including it because it's definitely part of your skill in a mystery bounty.
I equated the variance of the bounty pool as being similar to the amount of flips that you need to win an event. And basically all I was trying to imply there is that you can't remove the variance from this bet. There's a lot of luck involved in the bet. So the idea that this element of randomness that comes into play with the bounty aspect somehow reduces the skill, I think is like a very big oversight of the actual skill that's at play here, because having gone deep in a relatively big mystery bounty in the 10K,
secret bounty,
secret bounty, the strategy was so wildly different when the bounties weren't in play on day 1 and then were suddenly gonna be in play on day 2 and then weren't gonna be in play on day 2 and then suddenly were again, as well as how much the strategy changed drastically from there being 7 figures in the bounty pool with like 3 or 4 tables left to suddenly all the big bounties getting plucked with 15 left.
Yeah.
Now, like, you're strictly playing ICM in a scenario where the biggest bounty you can pull is like 2.5 buy-ins, and it's completely irrelevant again, or mostly irrelevant again.
Yeah.
So
I love bounty events.
Yeah, I love them too, and I think the big thing that people need to understand about this bet that I don't think the betting public or even the observing public understands is that this is not a bet that is reflective or a good test of skill.
Absolutely not.
Right?
It's the farthest thing from it.
It's not the farthest thing from it, but I mean, it's just not a large enough sample where you can definitively say the winner of this bet is absolutely more skillful than the other.
You'd have to bet over 10 years or something.
And even then, when you're playing live poker, variance in tournaments is ridiculous. Like, we just kind of want to have some things to latch on to.
you guys are young. Why don't we just
crossbook for life?
For 10 years. Yeah, 10 years.
Crossbook for life. So sick.
It's just
always on.
At what point does it pay out, though? Like, when
Never.
you die, your kids get
you pay
your...
out every year. You pay out every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like this. We just get 2 life insurance policies on them, and depending on who won that year, they have to pump a bunch of money into the other one's life insurance policy.
Instead of heads up for rolls, it's X book for life.
Right, yeah. I like the way that's headed.
I love it.
Yeah, I think mystery bounties absolutely should be included. I could see an argument for either not including bounty events in the bet at all or not including the traditional bounty. Because I think that in essence, like they were talking about how you could game the system with the bounties, the regular bounties, not the mystery. And I think that that's a valid concern, right? Because they're just chips. They could just be passed off. You could buy other people's bounties.
I see what you mean.
To pad your stats and stuff like that.
Because there's no Hendon mob tracking it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense to exclude. Maybe.
Yeah, I think, and those events are so stupid anyway.
Yeah. So good example, I guess, when it comes to something like mystery, like the Mystery Millions. I know that we're both going to play that tournament.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about.
I know. I just mean in the sense of removing mystery bounties from the bet as a whole.
I was not saying that.
Okay.
No, I'm only saying traditional bounties. I'm saying I think that you guys should either take...
WSOP has like one of them a year, right?
Yeah, there's not many of them. There's 2 like super turbos.
There's like a 10K, right? Like, and then there's a small 10K, one.
Yeah, they're basically just turbos. Yeah.
And then there's the one that kicks off where you can win a main event seat, but that shouldn't matter.
Probably not.
Right. So yeah, like those traditional bounties, either they just shouldn't be included in the schedule at all, in my opinion, or the bounties themselves shouldn't count.
Honestly, from what I can tell on the schedule, I doubt either of you guys will end up playing them anyway, because I think there's like 3K, 6 max and stuff on the same days. So
isn't there a small one though? I thought that they did like a 1K or 1,500.
They have 2 1K super turbo bounties and one. Actually, I think it's just a regular super turbo on the very last day.
Okay.
The whole series.
But you're just saying there's way better.
I'm saying,
things to choose from.
like there's better events, and if you add in like win stuff, Venetian stuff, like, I'd be shocked if both those guys ended up playing the same event.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. It's like, why play the super turbo bounty when you can just go play an 1100 at the win?
Right. Either way,
3 million guarantee. Yeah.
Either way, that's a small detail that I think is worth ironing out.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Just because of, especially there will be bounties at other venues as well. And they're even more difficult to track or more easy to game, I guess, because I think that they just actually give you cash value chips. I could be wrong, but the last time I played Venetian Bounty, they just gave you like $100 chips.
Yeah, they do. And
So,
WSOP does the same thing.
Right.
With regard to the mystery bounties, do you think that the win will run like a massive mystery bounty this
Yes.
summer? Like, do you think they'll run like
Absolutely.
$1 million bounty like the WSOP?
If not $1 million, I think that they'll slap a big guarantee on the event itself.
Yeah, because I think they might do, because they've previously until now they've done.
How big was the one last year? Do you remember?
I think they had one where the top bounty was 250K.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought,
I thought so.
$250,000.
I wouldn't be surprised because they've only run mystery bounties at this point at the 600 and the 1600 price points. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a 3500 mystery bounty where the top bounty is $1 million and the prize pool, the overall prize pool might be like 5 million or 6 million or something.
I would
that.
like to see them get away from guaranteeing the bounty. I understand why venues have to do it, but I would like to see them get away from it because I think that it creates too much of a disparity in the payouts.
Yeah,
which again, we'll get into payout discussion soon.
Good
but
segue.
I want to stick on this for one more second though. Do you guys know the history of how mystery bounties came into play? This is actually kind of fascinating.
No, but I guess I just assumed it was Matt Savage who invented them, but I probably am wrong.
No, yeah. To my knowledge, the Wynn was the first venue to execute it.
Yeah, I was pretty sure of that. Yeah.
I'm almost positive
I
that's
literally
true.
didn't know what a mystery bounty was until fucking Conrad ripped off a $25,000 one at Orleans.
Orleans.
I'm like, how did he win 25? Like, what is this? And they're like, it's a mystery bounty. I'm like, what the hell's a mystery bounty?
So I'm pretty certain that the Wynn ran the first ever mystery bounty, and I think it was like right as COVID ended, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing that nobody will ever know: the WSOP had this in the works for the COVID summer that never came to be.
Oh,
So
Secret lore.
I remember talking with them, and they were explaining the concept to me, and I didn't get it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought what they were doing was something similar to like Shooting Star, where every table would have like a bounty player, and if you knocked them out, you just got a random envelope. So my monkey brain was thinking like, okay, so there's going to be hundreds of these bounties scattered amongst the field. If you're lucky enough to knock somebody out, you'll get an envelope and attach that. So I kept questioning him. I go, so do you guys know who the like mystery person will be that's worth $1 million? And they're like, no, like that's not the way it works. I'm like, I don't understand. I just don't get it. But they had
the mystery was the like. So you're like saying you knock somebody out, but you don't know that they're the bounty person.
no. I thought like once you were in the money, everybody would have a bounty chip.
Oh, okay.
Right. And like you knock them out and then somebody like when you registered the event, I thought that like somebody would be like registered as being the $1 million
okay,
bounty.
yeah.
So like that one person is just like
Dead.
everyone knows they're the $1 million bounty. They have no fold equity the entire tournament.
Wait, does the person know?
No, that's what I mean. I thought it was all a mystery. I thought that's where the mystery came in.
I thought the idea. I thought you were saying that you thought the idea was like one person is like the $1 million, so everyone's like, let's get this guy.
I think that would be really cool too.
That would be fun. It would be crazy, but it'd be fun.
Yeah, but in any event, like it's very ironic that they were actually the innovators, to my understanding of this event, but it was long after the Win that they were actually able to run their own.
Yeah, they'll never get the credit for inventing it.
No, and they don't need to because they're still going to continue to run the biggest of them.
Yeah.
Have we talked about WSOP implementing milestone satellites?
No, good
job.
Good thing to bring up. I'm really happy with it. So they got rid of the single table satellites, which I think everybody's a little bit bothered by, but
They got rid of that last year.
yeah. Correct. But they're not bringing them back.
I didn't see this. Did they actually said we're doing all milestones now?
Yes.
That's awesome.
my God.
Everything changed them out. Well, they call it something else.
Let's all celebrate the death of the traditional satellite because they are the worst form of poker.
It really is great, and I actually think it's probably better for everybody that the single tables are now gone as well, because most of that money didn't actually make its way into the events.
Right. He would
People
just
would get lammers and sell them.
Yeah.
Most people would come out here
Dude,
and
I used to
grind them.
grind them. I used to grind those back in the day. They were so soft.
They were, but
So
they
bad.
got to the
They
point
got tougher, right?
Like within the last 5 years or so, they were just like literally professional sit and go players.
No, yeah. I mean, I'm talking about like mid 2006 through 2010.
Oh, yeah.
They were
Yeah.
like just gold mines.
Yeah, and you could make a lot on the side bets
Yeah,
too.
there was always last longer, so it would just be essentially a bigger. Not everybody would participate in the last longer, but you'd probably have like 5 or 6 people out of the 9 that would. Or
It was
the 10
a
that
really
would.
good way to reduce the rake burden.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, if you're playing
Exactly.
a 5 plus 25, and you can get 5 or 6 people to buy into the last longer. Now all of a sudden you're playing like
you double. You essentially
7.5.
You like double
plus 25.
You double the prize pool without increasing the rate.
Correct.
So for those that aren't familiar with milestones, can you guys break that down?
Yeah, so I think that they call them
target stack satellites or something.
I can't remember. It's something different. It's not milestone, but anyway, the purpose is that effectively depends on what the rake is and what the buy-in structure is, but usually it's like 1 in 11 or 1 in 12 will get you a seat.
1 in 12 your stack.
Correct.
So say you start with 20,000 chips. Then you have a milestone, whatever it is. It could be, it's usually 10x, I think, or maybe 11x. So like you get to 200,000, you just have your seats. As soon as you reach that milestone, you get it, which is really nice. It's like, it just starts removing people from the tournament. And then eventually, once they get down to like a certain amount of people left, then it turns into a traditional satellite again.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is there's actually 2 ways that the venue's doing this. I spoke to the PokerStars people in the Bahamas about this because they weren't aware that there was a different way of doing it. But basically, Stars, they did it so that you could only get the seat by making it to the target stack. The Win does it where when someone gets to this target stack, their chips come out of play.
Right.
And then you can still win a seat by surviving until the last X number of players. But Stars, in order to cater to the chips not going out of play, Stars did this thing where when someone gets over the milestone, the milestone amount comes out of play and then the remainder gets split up at their table. And it was really clunky and difficult to execute because it's like, okay, the milestone's 240K. This person won a pot that ended up with them having 300K. So we now have to take 60K and distribute it between the 7 other players at their table. And it doesn't divide evenly. And it's really clunky to do that. So I much prefer the Win way of doing it.
Right.
And I hope that WSOP is doing it the Win way, where you can still just survive and win a seat.
Right.
And chips come out of play instead of the PokerStars way. But we'll see, I guess. I haven't read the format yet.
Right.
Yeah, I'm on KevMath's Twitter now. I'm trying to see if I can find where the actual structure comes from with these, as well as like what their version of the name is. Not that it's super important, but it's nice to get it right.
There's a little bit of strategy behind this, right, Hunt? As far as like,
There's a lot.
let's say
There's
the
a lot.
target is 220,000, and you're at 180.
Yeah.
How does that affect like who you're playing pots against?
Well, the interesting part of it is that because every chip that you win above the milestone amount is useless, right? So if you have 180K and the milestone is 220, if you're whenever you're going to play a pot, you have to take into account that the maximum number of chips you can win is 40K. So calling an all-in where you are risking, let's say, 100 of your 180K is absurd because
You only need 40.
yeah, well, you could lose 100K, but you can only win 40K, right? So there's a massively decreased upside. So you end up in this position where the further you are away from the target stack, the more you're playing just like a chip EV strategy. But as you get closer, you play more and more ICM to the point where if you're unlucky enough to win a pot where it you get to like the milestone's 220 and you have 210, now you're in this really dumb spot where you can lose a lot, but you can only win 10,000. So you sort of have to like wait until the absolute best possible spot where you can possibly win 10,000 without risking very much. So maybe you just take a spot where you just min raise open on the button or something.
Try to steal the blinds twice or something like
right.
that.
Like,
yeah.
and you see people doing stupid stuff. Like you see people like jamming all in when they get close to the milestone to
Which
try
is crazy.
to try to win the pot because they're like, oh, if I just take the blinds down, I get the target stack.
Right.
But then
so
they
want to put max pressure.
Yeah, but then they get called and they lose like half their stack and they're like, oh, now I'm miles away.
Yeah.
And it's just a massive punt to do that, right? So it's a really interesting format for that reason. I think it's really good.
Yeah, so they're called Landmark Satellites this
Landmark,
year.
okay.
And it looks like they've already started running them at Cherokee. So they haven't put any structure sheets out yet for the summer, but it looks like I can take a look at this structure sheet for Cherokee. And Let me squint a little bit.
I guess the main thing would be whether or not they take chips out of play. That's the thing to look out for.
Yeah, let me see if I can find anything along those lines.
You ever played any of these satellites, Landon?
Very few.
Okay.
Very, very few. Some at the win though. Some of the win milestone ones, but
They have some good ones at the win. I almost won a seat to the 10K last year in one of these, but I happened to come up against one of the worst poker players I've ever seen. Literally, like this guy who just had so little idea of what he was doing. I just could not believe it. And I just lost a flip to him where if I win it, I win the milestone. So
Right.
he got a 10K seat. So you guys can thank me for getting that guy in the prize pool.
Nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so it looks like at least at Cherokee, what they're doing is it's 10x stack, and then they play down to the number of people, or
So that's
equivalent to the
the
prize.
win way.
That's
Similar
the
to
win
the way the
style.
win does.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that I think is the best way to do it. I don't like the stars way of doing it.
Yeah. I don't think the stars way is very common. It seems like
No,
very...
I mean honestly, when I spoke to the floor at the Bahamas, he like was unaware that the way it was done elsewhere was different to how they were doing it. So I explained the win way of doing it to him, and he was like, "Oh, that's really good." And it sounded like they probably would change it. So I don't know if they have, because I haven't played a stars event since then. But hopefully they did change it, because redistributing chips is just weird.
It is.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny because you could get yourself into a situation where, say you're down to like 9 people and like 8 get a seat, and you're very close to the milestone, because if you're but like, how much do you want to go for the milestone as opposed to just waiting? Like if like where depends on what your stack is, what everybody else's stack is.
There's
right.
actually interesting concerns, and but the funny thing in the stars structure is what happened in one of them that I played in the Bahamas was there's a guy very close to the milestone. Another guy wins a huge pot, goes above the milestone, and those chips get redistributed, and the redistribution of chips takes another guy over the milestone. So
that's actually interesting.
because somebody else won a really big pot,
Right.
That's
also another reason not to have it, because that's kind of
because
dumb.
it's just it's weird,
Yeah.
right? Like this guy just got handed like an extra 7K chips or something. He was like, "Oh, I have the milestone now." I was just like, didn't even have to do anything. It was crazy, really crazy
Pretty wild.
spot.
All right, let's talk a little bit about. Well, actually, before we get into this, we kind of brought it up a little bit when you said there's other venues that you could potentially play. The Venetian made a big announcement today that they are going to have a brand new dedicated space this summer for the traffic, I guess, the WSOP brings in. So first of all, Lamanna, you mentioned this previously, and Kev Math doubled down on it. The WSOP is adding 100 extra tables.
Right.
However, they're dedicated strictly for dailies and milestone satellites.
wow, Becker's fucking thrilled.
But that's okay, because now now it frees up the other tables for
Yeah, I'm
right.
just saying that's not going to be an additional 900 players that they'll be able to seat for things like collide. And maybe it will. Maybe they'll cancel things those days. I'm not sure.
They'll cancel those things, and they are always running certain things. So it's just like now those more tables is better.
Yeah, more tables is better, assuming we can get the dealers.
More rake is better, more tables is
which,
better.
if you're considering being a
dealers is
dealer,
definitely better.
Yeah, if you're considering being a dealer, head over to academy.software.io. Check out Jill's dealing school. So the Venetian added a dedicated space now. I guess it's on their second floor, and it looks like they're doing it big. So I don't know if you guys remember, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they had dedicated space in the convention center. I think the Palazzo Convention Center.
I liked that a lot.
It's we. Oh, okay. So like now,
Hard to get to though, wasn't it?
it was very difficult to get to.
annoying
Parking
thing.
was annoying.
Right.
But looking back on it now, I think it was amazing.
Yeah.
In real time, it felt very off-putting to play there. Like when, granted, at the time, like I was mostly playing high stakes cash, so it didn't really matter to me. But like, if given the choice between playing at the Rio in a 5K versus going to this like dark, cold convention center with concrete floors and difficult to get to, I just kind of didn't want to do it. But practically speaking, like that was probably one of the smoothest summers that the Venetian ever ran. No wait times, no alternates.
Smooth. Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty incredible. So it looks like they're doing something similar now where they're dedicating 50 tables, which I'm kind of surprised it's only that many. I feel like they have the capacity to potentially run some pretty big events, especially if they slap like, a 5 million guarantee on a mystery bounty.
50 tables seems like nothing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, right?
I don't know how many they currently have, but it's probably about the same amount.
Right. Well, just in the poker room.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe. So are they also running? Are they running them in both?
I don't know.
Right.
So previously they would like previous summers they would run it both in the Venetian poker room and at the Palazzo. I don't know if you recall or not.
I
but
do.
like,
Yeah, I played at Palazzo one time, I think.
So I
think
assume that in the past they had been getting upwards of 100 table at least, if not more.
They certainly. I know that they expand the poker room to where they have tables like just outside
The
it,
sports
like
book,
next to my hands in the shot. But they have like tables in the sports book and tables in every area like around it with where they have the stadium blackjack and stuff like that. So like they definitely expand it during the summers, but this will hopefully be a lot less clunky than when they do it there.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to know if like these 50 tables are just dedicated to like, you know, maybe day 2 stuff or whatever. I'm not sure. And if they have other tables elsewhere. But the other big addition that I saw that caught my eye was they're also going to have a dedicated streaming space, which Venetian's never ran a stream before. So this will be pretty interesting. It means that they've been working on this for quite some time. I would expect there to be some operator behind this. And maybe not, but I know that like GG's been looking to get into the streaming space. I know that Stars is, and granted, this is probably happening with the resorts, but I'm sure Stars is also interested in getting into the streaming space when it comes to these live venues. So it'll be interesting to see if there's someone attached to this Venetian live stream or whatever. It obviously won't be GG because they have an affiliation of some sort to WSOP as well as to Bally's Live, I believe. But in any event, that struck me as very interesting because I don't think Win streams during the summer.
I've never seen Windows.
I'm pretty sure their only stream is when WPT does it, and they bring in share hands. So this does kind of get them a little bit of a leg up as an alternative space. But again, it's interesting to me that the capacity is still so low. Like, what do you estimate the wins tables are during the summer? It has to be closer to 100, right?
I think it's
way over
double Venetians, if not more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And during the winter, the WPT Winter Festival, they have that whole convention area with hundreds of tables.
That is as close to the WSOP part 2 that we see in America.
Can you imagine if they did that this summer? I would love that.
So you realize, it would be, I don't know if they would get the traffic that would, I don't think that they can, I don't think 2 venues can support the same thing.
That's a fair point.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that everybody does really well with the overflow. But running 2 festivals, like if the WPT ran simultaneous to WSOP, I think that both suffer a little bit.
Yeah, I guess
maybe a lot of it.
All I'm really doing is like the convention center is so much more comfortable than being crammed into the casino. Like it makes such a difference when you're playing and you don't have like slot machine noises in the background. It really does.
But this Win series in December has really taken the place of what Commerce. What the hell was it called? What did it used to be called?
The California Poker.
No. The one that happens like end of January through
LAPC.
LAPC. Yeah. Sorry.
How quickly we forget.
It still exists. It's just been a long time since it's been
WPT.
Anything important.
Right.
But that series used to be the second biggest thing that happened in America, and I think WPT, during December blows that out of the water now. Fewer events. LAPC was like 100 events. It would run for 6 weeks or so.
Right.
But in any event, this is all very great for people who play MTTs. Guys like young Jermey Becker and Landon Tice who are out there on the grind. How are you going to get from venue to venue, man?
Uber.
We got to get you a
Scooters.
Are you gonna say car?
No, you got a car.
I thought you were gonna say scooter. Get him one of those little birds,
Like a Vespa?
Yeah.
Start Vespaing around.
Well, I got to protect his health. I don't know if I trust him on that scooter.
That's true.
We gotta keep our little race pony healthy.
Yeah, the bet's going to be in some trouble if one of you gets hit by a car after 12 events.
Yeah, can't have that.
Well, I mean, it's mutual plate events, so.
Yeah, I just mean the bet's going to be off.
The bet's going to be off. Yeah. Right.
I don't know.
Let's try to fade that one.
Yeah, let's fade
Wear
that
a helmet.
Life's hard, wear a helmet.
So yeah, I mean, I think that what this indicates to me anyway is the pressure that gets applied, like the downward pressure off of WSOP for other venues to really capitalize on all the traffic, right? For a long time, I think Venetian and Wynn were just kind of expected to be the next 2 stops. And case in point, they kind of rested on their laurels. I think Venetian lost a lot of fucking traffic over the last few years to the Wynn, to Aria, to MGM, to Golden Nugget, to all of these other places that were just like, they're not the only people in town who can run a 400.
And I think that there was a noticeable change. Like in the last couple of summers, I've put in much less volume at Venetian because it started to get to a point where even like the 1Ks at Venetian felt so much more reg heavy than the other ones. And I think it was because Venetian was struggling to attract recs at that time of year in the same way that the Wynn and some of those other venues were, like you say.
Yeah.
I think they ended up in a position where there was less value in those 1Ks because it was just regs firing 8 bullets over 3 days instead of actually attracting a lot of recs.
When I moved here, for probably the first 5 to 7 years, the Venetian was the spot that I put the absolute most volume in, and it was not even close. It was probably like 3 to 1 compared to any other venue.
Right.
And I played Bellagio a fair amount. It's interesting to see the fall off because I think that they still are pretty tarnished by the Sheldon Adelstein name, which has no affiliation. They've totally sold. I don't know who bought them out, but it's been a couple years now that they've been under new ownership, and not much has really happened to rebrand their poker room or to bring them back into favor, I don't think. As a matter of fact, I think maybe some things have continued to like keep that negative slide going where, in my experience anyway, it's always a hassle playing there. Like whenever you cash an event, they're like very strict about the way they pay you out. I don't recall, but I remember when Landon won his and we had to divvy up the prize pool. It was a pain in the ass.
Long time ago.
Like, yeah, it was a long time ago. But like they would only
swapping chips and all that kind of stuff. Remember,
it's impossible.
It was like, yeah, right.
It's the only place in the city where if somebody says like, I have a 5K chip for Venetian.
Yeah.
Everybody at the table's like, can't do anything with it, man. Just can't accept that.
Right.
There's just no way I'll be able to do anything with it. And that's shitty
It's
because
not
it's like
built for like anything. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
interrupt. It's not built for anything like over 510. Essentially,
Right.
like any kind of like higher stakes, it just makes it a nightmare.
same.
And that's why high stakes kind of like never took off or did a little bit, but then died there.
It's crazy too because their room was beautiful when we first moved out here. They had the salon area and like they just keep continually making it smaller and smaller. And I know that they had a big rake hike at the small stakes, and it sucks because I think Venetian could potentially be one of those rooms that takes off. But I also think like Venetian is in direct competition with like Resorts World. I see those rooms as being very, very comparable. And now that Resorts has run a successful NAPT, they have this Stars affiliation in some capacity. I wouldn't be shocked to see them come out with a pretty heavy summer schedule that starts to see some higher buying
Resorts
stuff.
World spiciness.
Maybe.
Resorts World is sick.
Why wouldn't Stars want to run an MPT during the summer?
NAPT.
NAPT during the summer.
They
right?
might. They really might.
Seems pretty likely.
They might run like a 5K.
Yeah, like they don't care about the WSOP. If anything, they're going to want to compete. You know, I think that
Or just find times to put it after. Like,
I mean,
construct appropriately.
it's super. We long forget, but the M Resort
I do not know.
used to run one of the biggest guaranteed 2500s every single summer, and they would just find a way to fit it right into the schedule when no one else was running anything big buy-in, no limit for those 3 days. And they would slap a massive guarantee on it. I think it was like 3 or 4 million, something along those lines. And we would all head south, young man. We would go right down to the fucking border of Mesquite.
right past the Jewel.
Right past the Jewel. Halfway to LA. And we'd show up at this random place that no poker player had ever been to before. And would all play
value.
2,500.
Maybe this year they'll have a tournament at what's that place on the border? Whiskey Pete's or something. Like,
Gotta go out to Prim. Prim's got a $5 million
that place with like the roller coaster or whatever.
That's
like,
right.
Yeah.
Go to Pahrump.
Whiskey Pete's, Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I think that this summer might be the biggest as far as available volume goes.
Variety is the spice of life. Mark.
And I think it's going to be like magnitudes larger than last year. Mainly because of so many new properties that have potential to come into play, like specifically Resorts World. I think that they put themselves into that top 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
I think Arya is putting a bigger focus on MTTs now than ever.
Conrad's going to play 1,500 events this summer.
1,500, not
I'll take the
1,500
under.
buy-in events. He's going to fire 1,500 entries.
Right, 1,500 entries.
It's never if
30
if,
buy-ins per day for
if anybody could do
50
it.
days.
if you put your ego aside, it's never been a better time to be an MTT player in certain buy-in ranges. Like if you want to play an ABI of 1K, you can find a 1K or below every single day
Every
of the
day.
week,
Yeah.
and maybe multiple.
I think in theory, that's part of our mutual during the summer.
What?
It's like going to be roughly around that ABI a little bit higher, maybe like 3K, 4K, right? Because sometimes we're both going to be in the 5K 6 maxes or the 5K freeze out.
Yeah, you'll probably
3Ks,
play an
to
ABI
10K.
around 2K.
Mm-hmm.
Around 2, where most
Yeah.
of the volume is going to be like potentially just a daily 1K. Like the Win ran 1K dailies.
yeah,
that were really,
did that.
really good.
They did that last year.
If that's where you put the bulk of your volume, you're doing it wrong.
It's
Right,
not
but it
about
was
where
like-
I'm putting my volume. it's
No,
about
we
what's
told you, stay away from the dailies.
But it
This
was-
is strength.
No.
Gotta stay away from the dailies.
Oh,
but
we
that-
need to have a talk.
During the summer, they run, what Landon's referring to is they run like a 1K turbo every night, basically.
Yeah, I know.
So it's not the random $200
Okay.
daily.
No, I understand.
I know.
Yeah.
I understand.
It's a daily.
I don't want to talk strategy on air, but we need to have a conversation about this because I do not think that is the right approach by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, maybe if you bust something else is what I'm assuming.
Yeah,
you're
but
talking about.
Correct.
Like, yeah, like
it's not where I'm actively trying to go.
right. You play something else, you bust, you don't have anything else to play, so you go play the turbo at the Win.
Correct.
There you go.
yeah, there'll be times.
It only counts if he also plays it.
Right.
And where I'm going with this in some regards is even if he's not in that tournament and there's nothing for me to do, I'm still going to go play and get volume in.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, man. When an event ends at 4 a.m. and you got a 1,500 on the schedule the next day, sometimes you have to be considerate of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
You can't just turn into this blinded robot where it's like get in as many events as humanly possible. You have to have a plan in place. And honestly, like if I'm in your shoes, I'm not really looking at anything at the 1K and below buy-in level outside of the mystery bounty. Like there's the ability to play an ABI of like 2K 2,500 pretty much every day where you're getting in somewhere in the neighborhood of like 45 to 60 events.
Potentially, like we don't really necessarily know if that's true yet, but it's more so
Well, based off history.
there's a difference between strategy for the bet and then things I can play when I have no time to do anything else. And if I don't feel like playing, I'm just not going to. But if I feel like playing and there's the only thing that left is a 1K, I'm just going to go play.
Okay, man. I'm sorry. Fuck. I don't know why you're yelling at me.
You make it seem like I have this like weird strategy when it comes to choosing things to crossbook versus things to just play.
Oh, I mean, it's like if you had $100 million saying that there's nothing else to play that day, so I'm going to go play the Win Daily. Like, have a little value for your time.
Some of us
Nice, Berk.
some of us
Nice.
like playing poker tournaments, you know?
Yeah, and
Some of us
that's
actually
totally
like it.
reasonable, but it's just like, sometimes you got to put a little bit of value to your time and understand that if you have a down period, that is also valuable, especially over a 7-week stretch where you're going to be spread really fucking thin.
He's young. He's got too
I
many
have a
years
day
left.
off today,
That's true. That's true.
Where's the daily?
It
Godspeed.
would actually be really funny if you just rocked up at the daily.
There's no. Where's it? I gotta ask Becker.
What
Where
do
would
you
he?
mean?
Where
There's
would he go?
Dailies everywhere, every day.
Yeah,
Every day.
Where would he go?
What's the difference?
I gotta. This is my
What is
prep work.
different?
My prep work is to show up and play live poker.
Okay. Moving off of that.
You want
and-
to talk about payout structures?
Yes, I want to talk about payout structures. So there was an interesting conversation that was spurned by Ella, who I think I got to play with briefly in the 10K main event before I tried to rocket all my chips off to go play the cash game at the WPT. So this video is probably longer than worth playing. 2 minutes is a bit much, but just to summarize what it is, basically what her and a few of her friends, I guess, Yuval and the person that I've been speaking to the most is, I can't pronounce his name, but Real Rudama. What they're implying is that everybody does better if fewer people are paid and they're paid a little bit more money. So essentially, like if the average dollar amount per cash goes up, then people who are breaking even / small winners will be a lot more healthy and able to sustain longer, while the people who are basically losing and contributing to the prize pool, they're implying that those people have outside funds anyway and aren't going to go anywhere. So essentially, the argument, as I understand it, is that the focus from venues should be kind of honed in on more specifically the grinders and the people who are just like right around the break-even line, maybe slightly losing, slightly winning, whatever the case may be, and giving them greater opportunity to self-sustain by increasing their average dollar amount when in the money. And I think that that's actually like an okay idea to, you know, effectively make it such that if you're the type of person that is, you know, constantly on the grind, whatever. I mean, we know how expensive it is to travel to all these venues, to put up a year's worth of buy-ins, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if you're an ABI of like 1K or something along those lines. It does force you to have an ROI that's sustainable. Now, where I disagreed with this, in essence, is that the fewer people who cash, the lower the cash percentage frequency is. So a little bit of their math that was presented, I think, was maybe a little bit, I don't want to say wrong, but it was not fleshed out far enough. So they kind of presented a model where if you're cashing with a certain percentage, player A through player H, at 15% payout structure, then you're winning or losing X amount of dollars. And if you reduce it to 12.5% cash rate and look at that chart, everybody does better, right? So basically, like, if you're above zero, you'll always do better. And that's obvious because more money's being concentrated now to the bottom than it would be if you were paying more people. You can test this at the extremes. If you pay 99% of the field, then obviously everybody's return on investment is incredibly low because there's only one buy-in to distribute amongst 99% of the field, right? And if you pay winner takes all, then obviously, you know, the only person who benefits is the person who's able to cash. So now your cash frequency is equivalent to your ROI. It's a 1-to-1. But whenever you get in the middle of it, it doesn't become quite as obvious, right? Because what's not clear here when you're looking at these scenarios is that if you are player A who cashes, let's say player B who cashes 50% of the time when 15% of the field is paid out, you can't be player B also on the second scenario where they're paying 12.5%, right? Your cash frequency just has to drop.
It's just not possible to be in that same position. Yeah.
Correct. So by proxy of that, you're naturally going to do worse in a 1-to-1 comparison or an apples to apples comparison. And I think that like where this whole conversation misses the mark, and you guys can weigh in, is that looking at this through the lens of the min cash, or looking at it through the lens of the average dollar amount that you cash for, is relatively it's mostly irrelevant. What actually matters is what impacts ROIs the most. And that's often just going to be sheer and utter skill. Now, of course, if we take these to the extremes where we only play winner take all or we pay half the field, then your cash frequency is going to matter a lot. But the impact that it has on your overall ROI, whenever we're talking about paying 10% of the field versus 12.5 versus 15%, it's pretty negligible compared to your actual overall gross understanding of MTT strategy. Sorry. What you guys, you grind MTTs a hell of a lot more than I do. What consideration do you give to percentage of the field paid? And how much does it matter to you if they were to pay 20% versus 15 versus 10?
To me, for me personally, in terms of whether I decide to play an event or not, it doesn't matter at all. Like and outside of something absurd like a winner take all event, which you have to think twice about to some degree, but it might be good value. I don't know. it wouldn't affect how much I decide or whether I decide to play an event. But I definitely think from a perspective of how it affects the overall ecosystem, to make a call back to the previous debate, I think it's definitely a consideration. And I think what it comes down to is how fast are the fish going to lose their money, right? Because if every event was winner take all, it would heavily favor whoever the best players are in that event. You would see that the best player in that event, or the player that had the highest ROI, would be the player who wins at the highest frequency. It would be a very, very simple equation. And the more that the payouts are distributed amongst the field, the slower the weakest players are going to lose their money, because they're going to have variance is going to dictate that they have a slightly increased chance of cashing, right? Even the worst player in an event, if 15% of the field is paid, that player is not going to have a negative 100% ROI. They're going to have negative 50, negative 60, maybe. I don't know. We don't know what the lower limit is. But the bottom line is, every bit of logic that we've used about the poker economy for a long time has all been basically centered around, we don't want the fish to lose their money so quickly that they don't come back, right? You don't want a fish to show up, get stacked, leave, and decide, I'm never playing again because I didn't enjoy this. So for me, like, I don't even care if they decided that they wanted to pay even more places, if they wanted to pay 20, 25%, whatever. Like, I think that more people getting paid is more likely to keep recreational players around and keep them playing. Mm-hmm. And I think there are things that you can do with the top end of the payouts, like your tweet said, that maybe reward the final few tables a little bit more and things like that. But I don't see any obvious reason as to why fewer people getting paid would be better for the overall ecosystem, personally.
Yeah, so the argument that they were basically making was that I don't think they were disagreeing with anything that you just said. Mm-hmm. So I think that we can all come to an agreement that it's better to distribute some of the money to the players that are losing. And the easiest way to do that is just pay more people, right? Mm-hmm. But truthfully, and I think this is a pretty valid point, that's not really about keeping them from going broke, because the fact is recreationals who play this game almost certainly have replenishable income to do so.
Yeah, and I didn't mean it from that perspective. I meant from an enjoyment perspective. That
right.
They will not, if they play 10 MTTs and they don't cash, they're much less likely to play an 11th than if they cash twice or three times.
I agree with you. Right? So that was going to be my follow-up.
Yeah.
The real optics here is that venues want to give people a pleasurable experience.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. They want them to feel like they got their money's worth. They want them to feel like they had a legitimate chance at seeing some sort of return, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that that's one important aspect as to why paying more places is better. And their counter to that is like, okay, fine. But if we have replenishable income at the bottom, in other words, let's say, and I think this is a fair statement to make now, maybe not forever in perpetuity, but I think it's fair to make now with the rise of popularity in MTTs. If we have replenishable fish, so to speak, and they're just always going to be there propping up prize pools, doesn't it then become more important to ensure that the people who are barely getting by are able to sustain themselves? And their basic argument is that by paying fewer places, but giving them more money whenever they do finally make the money, essentially what will happen is you start to prop up that middle. And I think that that's a very fair argument to kind of come from that lens or that vantage point when it comes to the health of the overall ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I would just accomplish that by taking money away from the top.
Agreed.
So that I think is really the issue that needs to be addressed in some capacity, because I do think there are a lot of events that are probably too top heavy, and I think that there's a little bit too much of a focus on people caring about like how much is for the win, more so than people caring about just being able to get a solid payday for getting like 14th. You know, like you don't want somebody to play a 3-day event, get 14th, and if they're a recreational player, they're like, I played 3 days and I didn't even make that much money. Like, right. You want them to feel like if they go deep in a big field, they're getting rewarded for it, right? So you don't want the final 2-3 tables to be paying way less than like 4th place or something, you know? So that's what I would do. I would just shift money away from the top few spots.
Yeah, good.
Do you think that like a paying out more spots makes the overall field softer? Like say like I know because like you were talking about like you know how a lot of times the recreational players they don't pay a lot of attention, not maybe considered of the rake, right? But I bet they are considerate of how many spots get paid.
For sure.
Way more than they are the rake. So if
Yeah,
you're
for sure.
looking at 2 1Ks, right, and this place, you know, maybe they're similar guarantees or something. This place pays 15% of the field compared to this place that pays 11. They might choose to play the 15%.
Yeah,
Because
right?
they've got a higher chance of
They got a
making
higher
their money
chance
back.
of
Yeah.
getting their money back, right? Like, and everybody wants that experience of cashing, right? So like now, now the field that pays 15% is softer, which also is going to increase the bottom line of the better players.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask the question and then immediately give my answer. I'm glad you guys chimed in, but I agree with everything that both of you are saying. I think that it's much more attractive to the overall populace that's playing outside of maybe the biggest winners, right? And secondarily, I think that effectively by paying more places, it is a winner's tax, right? So it's a redistribution model that is now taxing the absolute best and kind of capping their ROI in a certain regard while redistributing that money to the players who have negative ROI, right? It's reducing their negative ROI ever so slightly. Now, the biggest thing that I want to illuminate here is I think that the problem that Ella and the others are kind of illuminating here is that it's difficult to sustain as a break-even player. And their big focus was they wanted to make the jump from losing player to break-even to small winner as small as possible. And I think that they thought they were accomplishing that by reducing the amount of places that pay. But in my opinion, they have their eye on the right problem, but the solution is... like the solution they're presenting actually doesn't address the root cause in any capacity.
Yeah.
Truth of the matter is, by concentrating more money to when you do cash, but reducing the frequency at which you cash, it all comes out in the wash, right? If you pay 10% of the field and you make more money when you cash, but you cash at 33% less frequency than you would if they paid 15% of the field, then it's even. It's just, it's all even anyway, right? And I think that the way that structures can account for this and kind of find a way to appease both bodies is by being really flat for that first 5% payout. So if you're paying 15% of the field in a big field, let 15% all the way down to 10% earn roughly the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And I think the World Series has started to implement this in a lot of the larger fields, and it's really good for everybody involved. So they only get 1.5x their buy-in, finishing 15 to 10% remaining instead of like 1.8 if it was a 12.5% payout table. Who cares?
Yeah, I actually think I've thought this for a while, but I think it's worth experimenting with literally just giving people their buy-in back for like...
I said that too.
Like just have pay 20% of the field and have 15% to 20% just get the buy-in back.
Yeah, I said something similar. The powers that be think that it's really optically bad.
People don't
And
like
then
that.
it puts a sour taste in people's mouth.
It does. People are like I played all this time and I don't make any money. Like I got my money back, but they don't see that as making money. They see it as,
honestly, I think it depends.
weird, right?
In my opinion, I think it would be the difference between if you make the money on day one versus day two. I think if you have to come back for day two,
You want to make money.
you want to actually profit.
right.
Yeah.
But if you get paid out on the same day that you registered, getting your money back wouldn't be all that terrible of an outcome. You
So
know?
maybe the only way that would work is if you drastically increase the number of payouts.
Like to 25% or something.
Or yeah, like to the point where you always on day one, every tournament, you're going to make it that far. So there's no chance that you come back for day two and you still don't actually profit, right?
Yeah, the
So,
old
like-
World Series structures were able to do this, and that was whenever they were paying fewer people, but you always made the money the last level of day one. But it was back before everybody wanted piles of chips, and day one structures were just basically pretty fast.
Yeah, maybe there's a way to structure it so that the idea is making it through day one is guaranteed to make a profit, and making it to a certain point of day one is guaranteed to make your buy-in back.
Yeah.
And then from day 2 onwards, you start to be like, okay, I'm now I'm going to be making more and more money as I go on.
The challenge you'll run into there is now you lose these gaudy numbers for first place, right? Because if you're paying that extra 5 to 10% of the field out, or even just their cash back, a lot of that has to come from top prize money.
Yeah,
and top prize money is only paying like 8% now.
That would definitely be an issue. I guess it would rely on having to be really flat once you get into the money.
Right.
Just like have hundreds of people make the exact same.
Which
amount of money.
I think that is something we should definitely be leaning into.
Oh, I think that's fine. Yeah, I don't care about that.
And I really do think that the way to really correct the root cause of this problem, if you want people to be able to sustain as poker professionals, so to speak, better, is to just be flattening payouts across the board to where instead of it being top heavy in the sense of a couple of places, it's top heavy in the sense of like a certain percentage of the field. Like the final 5% of the field is making 80% of the money.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
They should call it the Flat Earther tournament.
No, they should not. You're terrible at marketing.
If there was a tournament with only flat earthers, I would play that. Believe me, I would play that tournament.
That's fair. That does sound pretty profitable.
I'm not a flat earther, but I would sure as hell get in a tournament where everyone else was.
But yeah, I think that
imposter earther.
I think that that's the big thing that could be challenged and reconsidered from payout table standpoint is that, making it to the money, 15% of the field remaining, even making it to the 10% mark, even the 5% mark, none of this has to come with a pretty hefty reward, right? Like generally speaking, you're less than 2/3 of the way through the tournament at that 5% payout mark, unless it's like a very small field, of course. But even still, even a small field, if you're talking about like, a 50-person field, getting down to the final 3 players, that's still... I mean, I guess that's more than 2/3 of the way through because it's end game.
So here's an interesting concept of how I think it's good to look at this. I think it's good to look at it in terms of you want players to be getting a decent hourly rate, right?
Yeah.
You want that if they play a long time, they should expect to make decent money. And anytime you arrive in a situation where a player is able to play 2-3 days of poker and make very little money for it, that player is going to be unhappy. And if that's a recreational player, they're less likely to play that tournament again. So what you want is you want to prioritize having the pay jumps line up with a period of time, which is why I think it's good. Like if you make it 3/4 of the way through day 1, you get your buy-in back. If you make it to the end of day 1, you start to make a profit. If you make it to the end of day 2, you make X amount more, like stuff like that. I think that's a good way to do it.
I still don't know why there's like random numbers for all the payouts and prizes. Like you can very clearly round them all and make them all nice numbers.
Well, it's because they're doing percentages. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's like if you want to give 12.5%, like 1.5x, and then you want to give, like you just go percent by percent, like you're talking about. You go from 12.5 to 10, then to 8, then to 6, and you just gradually increase it, and then I guess have less for first, second, and third. But that's kind of okay.
I mean, we talk about this all the time with major events like WSOP main, WPT main, whatever.
Massive for FT.
Yeah, there's just like a lot of room to redistribute final table money to like final 3 tables, where whenever you finish 18th in a field of 5,000, it would be nice to make more than like 15 buy-ins or 10 buy-ins or something like that.
I wonder how the DraftKings 50-50 would do now that people are a little bit sharper with like rake and like how tournament payout structures are.
Well, 50-50 died because remember
the DraftKings?
I thought you were talking about like heads up cash games.
Yeah, DraftKings did a tournament where 50% of the field got paid out.
I remember this vaguely, but I don't remember what the actual structure of the payouts were. Was it just like so if you made top 50, everybody got their money?
The buy-in was $1,500, and you started making $1,000 as soon as you cashed.
Interesting.
So you make less than your money back.
It had a pretty good turnout.
Wow. Yeah, that is a pretty good turnout. 1,100 is pretty good.
Shout out to Derek.
Yeah, our boy Derek got second place.
Wow.
Oh, Derek.
Yeah, scroll down a little bit. Let me just... Oh, I know Ping. I play with him all the time.
Matt Affleck's in there.
Muckle.
Cool Puja.
Man, yeah, a lot of names.
Turnout. But if you look at the payouts, the buy-in was $1,500, and just looks like a lot of people just, sort of got money back, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. I mean, I like this. I like this a lot. First place ends up being
$200K.
So it ends up. I mean, that's big.
I think that's,
how the fuck they put so much money up top.
Honestly, I think I really like this because I think even giving somebody only a portion of their buy-in back is fine as long as they don't have to play very long to get that. Right?
Yeah.
If they play half a day. And they get
of course.
2/3 of their money back.
Right.
That's kind of okay. Like I think most people are okay with that.
How are they able to put 15% up top? I don't understand. How could you put that much? How could you have that much of the prize pool up top?
What's the prize pool?
1.5.
1.5.
Right? How could you have that much prize pool up top if you're paying half the field? It just seems crazy to me.
I don't know.
I'm seeing an issue with the main and why we're not going to get nice payouts, and it's because if it keeps getting bigger year over year, they're probably going to keep the gimmick going that the biggest entry that exists will be the highest payout.
Of course.
So like this year was 12.1 and then 6.5 for second.
Yeah, it's
just a massive.
Honestly, it's absolutely inexcusable, right?
And like we're not going to go back and say, okay, now that there's more people, let's make the prize structure good.
And that's what the conversation actually needs to be. Is it's the redistribution of
wealth,
of the top prize money, right? Like you actually need that to be distributed amongst the top 1% finishers or whatever. I'm choosing arbitrary numbers, but like it needs to be distributed flatly across the board because so much variance does just choose ultimately who wins, especially when you don't facilitate chops. So though I think this conversation is maybe brought up in the incorrect way when we're looking at like what percentage of the field gets paid out, I do think it's a conversation that we should be having and math that the community should be looking into in order to better the average ROI. Now, the thing that's not being spoken about here that is a big part of the root cause is it's impossible to do anything to the structure that makes it easy for players to gain ROI. The payout structure is just a distribution of the prizes, right? So none of that should have a massive impact on a player's win rate.
The only thing that make the ROI go up is reducing the rake.
Well,
basically.
Right, exactly. Except rake considerations,
well,
right?
what you're getting at is being really fucking good at heads up, no limit is worth a lot in something like the main.
Right, and then it just carries out forward, right? So being really good at heads up is worth a ton. Being really good three-handed is worth a ton. Being very good at final table ICM is worth a ton. Being very good at bubble play is worth a ton. So the whole point is like, I understand the desire to find the people who have like a very small win rate in these ABIs that are just barely beating the rake, et cetera, and saying like, what can we do to reduce rake considerations? Oh, I know, we can pay more, right? And the easiest way to pay more is to pay fewer spots, yada, yada. But that doesn't actually alleviate the rake considerations. It's just being paid now a little bit hefty. Like there's a heftier rake impetus on the losers, right? So now you're just creating more losers.
Like there's like a fixed amount of ROI that can be distributed among the field.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's all based off of the negative ROI.
And it doesn't matter how they do it. It's just it just gets redistributed.
Exactly.
Right?
ROI is driven by the negative ROI that contributes to the field, right? So the fewer places you pay, the more negative ROI people you're now instituting into the field. That break-even player became a loser now.
The total ROI of everybody has to add up to whatever the rake is.
Right.
So if the rake is 9% or 10% or something, rake is 10%. The total ROI of everybody has to add up to minus 10%.
Correct.
Do you think that there's a way for WSOP? I'm just like always thinking about the main because it's very like toxic to me now, realizing that the payouts from now moving forward are based off of systems from previous
that were flawed,
that were very, very terrible.
Yeah.
But like, is there a way to switch it to have a good payout structure, but then say, okay, if you make final 3 tables, you're guaranteed at least 500K or whatever? Or is it just going to be
it's hard for them to go back?
Like
it's hard for them to,
is
right. It's hard for them to like break the record this year of entries.
Do you think it's going to break again?
Yeah, probably. I don't see why I wouldn't. I mean, maybe not, but there's a lot. But
I thought one of the worst things that they did last year was both attempt to break the record of entries and
the first place
number.
Right, because now they can't go back. They can't like have 11,000 people or 12,000 people and then have first place be 10 million.
I mean, they can in the
they definitely can. They definitely won't.
That's the thing, right? They can't do it because of their perspective that it looks bad.
Let's go,
but I don't think anybody that plays the main event really gives a shit about how it looks in the sense of, oh, we didn't, we said we broke this record last year and now we didn't, because like look at Jermey Gold's year. Like for 15 years, we were looking back at Jermey Gold's year and going, wow, that was the biggest main event. That was the biggest first prize, whatever. And people still played it was like 2006 or something. People still played the main event. We didn't go, oh, well, they didn't successfully follow up on 2006, so now I'm not going to play the main anymore. Like, it's just no one thinks that way.
I think this might be an unfair comparison because I'm not sure that I'm not just cherry picking data here, but since the main event went from paying...
Look at that. It was 12 and then 6.
Well, it was the same thing last year. It was 12.1, 6.5.
Yeah. Prize pool. Since the main event has shifted from paying 10% to 15%, entries have gone up year over year. So, like, I think I'm cherry picking data there. I'm not trying to insinuate that entries have gone up because they're paying more people, but I am kind of lumping it all under one umbrella of more people are having a pleasant experience and are more likely to return in the future. And I do think that that's worth speaking about. Last little bit that I'd like to touch on that I started to here, and then we can move on, is whenever you understand that ROIs mirror one another, that by increasing the ROI of one portion of the player pool, you're decreasing the ROI of another through payout structures or whatever. What really has to be understood is that if you want to close that gap, if you want to close the gap between the people who have a 0 ROI and a plus ROI, the people who have a slightly negative ROI and a 0 ROI, etc., if you want to close that gap, you actually have to do things to the tournament structure itself that either increase variance and reduce skill or alter the skill necessary in order to compete, like mystery bounty, for example. Now that's a whole new skill set that isn't necessarily quite as fleshed out and understood, which will now create new pockets of skill.
Double board bomb pots.
Double board, like new pockets of skill can develop. But the point is, you can't point the finger at you can't say that the problem is people's ROIs aren't high enough at the bottom, because that's the system. You're playing a zero EV, or you're playing a zero sum game. Yeah. That's the system. That's how it's baked in, is that winners are taking from losers, and that will always be the case. So if you're unfortunate enough to fall somewhere in the lower third of break even to losing, nothing that an operator can do for you outside of making it a flip and go the whole way through can improve your chances.
Oh, Landon, is the flip and go part of the bet?
No. I mean, yes,
probably,
but don't play it.
Because you flip until you get in the money and then you play out the tournament.
It has to be one of the lowest ROI tournaments on the fucking schedule.
I think it's funny because when they first brought it in, it seemed like it was going to be a good one, but the fish don't like it. The recreational players don't like it at all.
No, right.
Because they make you jump through so many fucking hoops to play the goddamn flip and go.
Yeah.
Run it online. Like, you just run it online the way that you run the whatever 10K seat that Lamanna one was, the $82 one where they just like flip you through. You know what I mean?
Right. It's all in. It's just an all-in tournament.
Yeah, run an all-in or bust tournament online where you don't. It's just set it and forget it. You know, you register, you leave, you get an email the next day and say, "Hey, congratulations, you made day 2."
They should run those things for every single event. Just
totally agree.
Run online flip and go satellites, rake free every single event. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Are we going to do some strat chat at some point?
I want to look at the payouts of the flip and go first. Are they good?
No, none of the payouts are good. What are you talking about?
Well, because
first place was like 112,000.
Well, because some of them are like payout wise are better than others when it comes to like final table stuff, just because the flip and go prize pool.
Marginally. Most WSOP events are somewhere between 8 and 12% the first, and then second place being somewhere between half and 2/3 of that prize money. So the distribution has always been and always will be, as long as Jack is in charge, very, very top heavy.
Very golden ratio.
Very golden ratioed. Yeah.
We should ratio that structure.
Yeah. I would like to think that this was a big part of Strat Chat. Yeah. I mean, this is a dusty fucking event.
It's a 1K, and Arta was the one who won it. That should tell you a lot about this event. Like, I don't want to play a 1K if Arta's in the
Masashi's at the final. Yeah, I mean, it's a super tough field where it's like 10 buy-ins up top, and if you're fucking Seaver, you only get even if you get second or better.
Wasn't there another one that like, D. Peters final tabled it or something? Like, just like
it was a few years ago. Yeah, that's when that DJ won.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is a big conversation that's a part of Strat Chat, but let's actually get into a hand. So Matt Glantz, a member of Team Lucky, submitted a hand to us. He wanted us to give our thoughts, mainly because, and these are my favorite kind of hand history discussions, there's no machine that's going to give you an answer.
Is he part of the wise men?
I don't know what that means.
You know how, like, in the sense of, like, the poker community, like, you have, like, people that you'd put on, like, the council.
Okay, so
does Matt Glantz count?
So you just made up a concept and presented it to me as though I should know.
Yeah, he's like, I'll make this up, and is he on it?
one of like the old guard, like, people, like, he's not really in poker much anymore.
I'll tell you what, Landon, for the sake of this conversation, let's say yes.
All right, he's the Oracle. All right. Oracle Glantz.
So he submitted a hand to us, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Team Lucky, it's Matt Glantz, Sean Deeb, Daniel Weissman, and Josh Weinman, sorry, and Josh Arya. You said Wiseman and fucking got to me.
My fault.
Josh Arya for the fourth. So Glantz basically prefaced and said, "Okay, I have a hand for you guys to go over. None of us agree on any of the decisions. So there's conflict at every stage of this hand." The way it plays out is they're 35K effective at 300, 600. Under the gun opens min. Glantz decides to flat.
Yep.
Red kings, under the gun 1. The button also calls, and then both blinds call, making it a 5-way pot.
The pot's a little off because there's the big blind ante wasn't in the replay.
Yeah, so there should be another 600 in the pot.
600 in the pot.
We see a flop of 10-9-4 spade club. It checks to Glantz, and he decides to stab for about half pot, 3K into 66. The button calls, and the big blind calls. So now we have an SPR of 2 heading into the turn, which is the Jack of Hearts, not our favorite card. The big blind checks. Glantz then decides to check. Now the button reopens action here for 1/5 pot or 20% pot, betting 3K into 15. Which obviously is very strange. The big blind elects to call, which I would assume is never really a hand.
And then we're left.
Just like a lot of Queen X. And now we're left to a decision. He says, I don't want to ruin the result for you. Discuss. And to preface this for you guys, what he told me about flop decision is one person wanted to check flop in order to check call. Another person wanted to check flop in order to check raise. And a third person wanted to bet flop. Obviously, Glantz went on the side of betting flop. What do you guys think, first and foremost, of the flop decision? So 10-9-4, 5 ways. We got red.
I think
kings.
it heavily depends on what the action actually is on the flop. Like I think if it goes, if you check and you check to the button and then the other 3 players fold, I think you can check raise. I think if it goes button bets and then it goes like call, I think check raise is like punting.
Really?
So,
I would think the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, I mean if it goes call, like you're not getting trapped.
Well, I just don't feel like you have enough equity anymore. Like
I would just shove.
Oh, okay. I mean, that actually kind of becomes okay, I suppose. Like that does feel slightly better than just check raising to like a size of, I don't know, like 10K or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I think our hand's way too vulnerable, and I think that
I can get on board with
I
can get on board with that if we get to the point where it's like bet and there's a bunch of dead money. Right?
Yeah.
So that could work. I think I could get behind that. I don't love betting, but if we do bet, I think we have to bet a little smaller than 3K.
Okay.
It's tough. It's tough to bet when you're not last to act in a 5-way pot, and then like half pot size is only really going to occur here from like the last player to act.
Right.
Anybody who's not last to act has to bet small in multi-way generally. So I would probably just want to bet like 1K or something here if I was going to bet, because at least then it gives you the opportunity to react if it goes like bet, raise, re-raise or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that there's some concern, and it's probably a little bit valid, on these board textures where specifically with the portion of your range that needs protection, betting 1K doesn't really service you all that well, because now either you get to the turn still multi-way with an inflated pot where you didn't really clean up all that much equity, or people see the bet as like very proby and then attack it in a very strange way where it goes like 1K, 3K cold call type of thing, and now you're in no man's land.
Well, see, that's funny because I just look at that as like, oh, well, now you just fold. Because I just
really?
think, yeah. I mean, I don't think you realize enough equity here unless you end up last to act. Like if you if you end up here out of position on this texture against the kind of range that actually continues versus that bet, I think that a lot of 2-pair plus is going to raise for sure, but I think the range that continues is so like equity dense that it's really, really difficult for you to realize equity, because a spade, if you get called in any more than one spot on a spade, like you're just dead now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And on an 8, you're basically dead.
Yeah.
On a jack or a queen, you're okay. On an ace, it sucks. Like you're basically dead. So you're drawing to like, not if you continue here and you're not last to act, you're drawing to a non-spade, non-8, probably a non-7, non-board pair as well. And you're also drawing to a check, because you can't easily, on any of those cards that are a, this particular card, like, realistically, if he had bet like a bigger size here, it would become a really awkward decision, right? So like, I just feel like people are really likely to underestimate how hard it is to realize equity multi-way when you're not in position, basically.
Yeah, I think that point is very valid, but what I guess is being glossed over a little bit here is that we always have the opportunity to reopen the action, right?
Sure.
So
yeah,
there is the sense of, can we just run it?
I mean, I think that starts to get better and better the more out of position you are,
right?
Know? And I think that it does feel weird just running it for 30K into a 6K pot in a lot of cases. But I think if you get to a point where you feel like you are up against ranges that are not, there's no like protection in there, and you feel like you're able to deny equity to, like, if you can get like queen jack to fold by just ripping, if you can get spades to just fold by ripping, then you're in a really good spot.
Because here's the thing, like, even a hand like 10-9 suited, which we I would assume would possess here, considering we're flatting kings.
Yeah.
We have 3 combos of 10-9 suited. I think that hand suffers the exact same struggles that pocket kings do.
Yeah.
When it comes to realizing equity, turn distribution.
Perhaps even worse, because you actually block the stuff that you are
beating
way ahead of.
Right.
Yeah.
And
everything is live against you when you have 10-9, because even like king 10, queen 10, jack 10, they have backdoor equity.
Yeah.
I
kind of like jam as like primary option number 1. I don't know what the machine would say. I don't really care. I like jam. I think jam is sick. You get like draws.
Check jam, or just like literally jam?
I think check jam.
Just
like in that spot. I think
or just really any way to find a way to jam, right? Like now I think the 1K becomes a lot more attractive, because you do open yourself up to the potential of being the one who ultimately closes the action, because it's unlikely, or maybe it's not unlikely, but it's maybe not the highest level of probability that it just goes call. Right? Like somebody's probably going to take a shot at shutting equity out.
I mean, I really like check jam here. I think it's sick.
Yeah,
if in this configuration specifically, right? If it goes like check, button bets, and you get a call,
right.
But if it goes check, button bets, folds to you, I don't like jam anymore.
If we get to the point where we are like, if we had checked and then it went button bet, big blind call, now we're getting to the point of there's 12K in the pot, and jamming 30K into 12 or 33 into 12K, completely reasonable, right? 34K, whatever it is. Like that's much more reasonable, because we're in a position where the price that like ace 10 would be getting is actually enough that ace 10 might just decide to call you off.
Right.
If you were just facing the button, it gets a lot trickier, like Landon says, because now you're jamming like 34K into 9K, so you're jamming for like 4x pot instead of 2.5, basically. So it's like a big difference.
Well, 2.5. It's a big difference, as well as when you have kings in the spot versus bet call, you're playing versus 4 cards. So it's very likely that someone has equity in the sense of drawing hand. Someone has equity in the sense of like 10x plus, where like it's very reasonable in that spot versus 2 people to fold out a draw, or like have them give them a bad price to call off a draw.
Right, precisely. Because if you have to go from here to river versus both ranges, you're just going to lose the pot too often.
Especially like in like kind of the live games that this hand's probably taking place in. A lot of the time, 2 turn goes check.
Yep.
So now you're going to see rivers a lot. You're going to see straight cards come a lot, and now you're in this weird spot where you don't actually get to do anything anymore because blocking is too thin, and check calling feels like you're lighting it on fire.
Yeah, you don't have a hand that always shows down, so you just naturally under-realize.
Right. And I think the main sort of lens through which I'm looking at this is when you're looking at multi-way, you have to be very conscious of just how many good runouts there are for you that are essentially like universally good, where it doesn't really matter how many players are in the pot, you know that you're in a very good spot. And with red,
like if you had spades here instead.
Exactly. Like if you have queen jack here, no spades, it's like it's very clear that like a brick is kind of okay, or brick is like whatever. A spade is bad. An 8 or a queen or an 8 or a king is very good.
Well,
right?
there's just a lot less bricks as you have extra equity. As if you have kings with a spade here, Jermey would be a light.
There's a lot less. There's more visibility, right, with certain hands here. And yeah, like you say, with spades, with stronger hands, whatever. But when you have red kings specifically, part of the issue is that when you do get continued here, some of the weaker hands in the ranges that continue are going to be hands like king jack and king queen, like red king jack and king queen that just have like a gut shot. So now, because you double block those hands, you're disproportionately more likely to get continued by stuff that has either the 8-7 open-ender, which is completely live against you. You're not blocking any of that.
Like Broadway plus.
Yeah, Broadway plus stuff, spades, like all that stuff. Even if we just had one spade, I would be a lot more confident betting this flop.
Right.
So I just feel like having red kings here just becomes really, really tricky.
All right, so let me read the back and forth that I had with Glance. I think you guys will appreciate, because I was kind of playing devil's advocate throughout all this, but obviously I agree with almost everything that you said. So first, by the way, there's 4 of them, mind you.
Yeah.
Okay. One member hates the flat pre. That means 3 of them consensus agree.
Like the flat pre?
I absolutely hate the flat pre.
Obviously, the flat. Here's what I said.
It's not the worst.
Here's what I said about
in machine land, kings will flat here a small amount.
You should probably just fold, right?
The reason why I specifically hate the flat pre is because unless you're playing at a table where you can be very confident that everybody behind you is squeezing at a high enough frequency, which is a really rare environment, you're now not getting the EV that you should out of flatting kings.
Right.
Like the reason to flat kings in theory here is because you're supposed to get squeezed a lot and then you can back raise. But in practice, people just call, and you just go multi-way a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
what I said is the flat pre is not great. You're old. Everyone knows you're old man traps. LOL.
Valid.
No need to protect that range when you're an old man. Okay,
baked-in trap.
First and foremost, everybody assumes that you have pairs there that back raise.
What if he's severely under 3-betting, so now he has to flat kings?
No,
because it's just too transparent.
That's faulty logic.
Severely under 3-bet is the answer.
I'm just saying, but you can't retroactively go back and put 3-bets in. You should have.
Well, the answer is don't be a nit. There we go.
So then he says 2 guys much prefer checking the flop, which I can get behind. However, I think it's a disaster if button checks behind me, which I don't think it's a disaster. I mean,
I don't think it is at all.
Realization is just so difficult.
It's just like
you have 25% equity here 5 ways. Like,
right.
It's just not that good.
And also just like we get to make much cleaner decisions once the turn comes a brick versus non-brick.
I do think that's a big point that people kind of try to do when they're playing multi-way pots is a mild entitlement of my hand is really good versus these people, and I want to make it win now.
Mm-hmm.
Like having red kings in the spot and going for bet and trying to make your hand increase in equity as you get folds diminishes it long term facing call.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where in reality, it's like your hand's not that good versus 8 other cards.
Right.
Like, you have 2 great cards, like, but now they have 8.
Yeah, like you have kings versus Omaha.
Double Omaha.
Versus two Omaha players.
Right. So then he says, one member wants to check shove flop. Weird. And I reply,
kind of based.
I reply, this is good in my opinion.
I like it.
So then he tells me what actually happened. And I said, okay, yeah, this will be a good discussion. Okay, so I'll give you guys the results now. He said, on turn, I was not intending to check shove, but the button sizing and the overcall makes it the most attractive play to me, which I agree with him. So ultimately, he check jammed the turn now. Well, I mean, what do you want him to do?
I think you just peel.
I think you just peel as well.
Oh, man, it feels bad.
See,
it doesn't, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined in spots like this where we have equity and we're getting a very good price, we're closing the action. To me, it takes a lot in order for us to justify reopening, it has to be a really good spot.
But I think it is a really good spot. The guy bet 20% pot and got called. That call is dead. There's no way that's a 2-pair plus hand ever. And to reopen the action on the button for 20%, to me signifies like king, queen of spades or nothing. And it's generally going to be like leaning on the 10x that wants to just check down, the 9-8 type of hands, perhaps like an ace jack that somehow got here.
Sometimes it's probably good for what it's worth.
20%?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like,
I mean, perhaps.
Like, I don't know if he's playing good, but it seems good.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. I just think having like 2 kings here, I agree with you guys that I would be more inclined to just call if we had aces, I guess.
Like this doesn't feel good to me. This doesn't pass the feel good test.
Nothing feels good though.
I think yeah, I mean,
call feels great. Actually,
it's really hard without like profiles here, right? Because it matters a ton whether the button is like vaguely good or not here. It matters a ton whether the big blind is like vaguely good.
It doesn't pass the vibe check.
Well, I think that it's hard for shoving to be a disaster because you still have equity. If you run into something, you block the king queen.
Right.
But I think that the likelihood of running into like the 8-7 and the 2-pair there is probably higher than it seems, just because of how condensed the continuing ranges on the flop are. I think a lot of 10x is actually going to check that turn. I think a lot of jack x is probably going to check that turn.
Well, I think almost all the jack x and 10x is going to be. I think almost all the jack x and 10x is going to have a straight draw also. There's just very, very little of it that doesn't, except for exactly ace jack, ace 10, and that should squeeze sometimes pre.
Yeah, but then this is where we get into like what kind of environment and profiles are we dealing with, right? Because
we're playing a 5-way pot live. You can guess the environment. I'm guessing.
I mean, yeah, but this is why I think the not 3-bet is a torch, and why it starts to like it starts to get into the territory where the weaker these opponents are, the more of an argument I think there is for small bet on flop, because they're going to tell you how good their hand is when they respond. Right? If it goes small bet and it goes call, turns a brick, you have the best hand almost always. If it goes small bet, raise, re-raise, or raise, call, or something like that, now your hand is trash and you can fold.
Or jam.
Or jam possibly.
Yeah,
but I think,
no matter what, you're not going to continue to try to get the showdown.
Exactly, yeah. Like I think that the weaker your opponents are, the more argument there is for like almost like an information bet in these environments, honestly, because they are going to, the action that takes place after you make a small bet here, multi-way, is going to heavily inform what the exact ranges look like. And if the ranges are heavily imbalanced, you're going to be able to take a subsequent action based off of that, as opposed to we put in 3K and then now we're getting closer to almost being committed. Like if it goes bet raise and it's just back to us, like are we just going to rip and get it in heads up here against the raising range?
I imagine at that point he would just fold.
But that feels even worse, right? Bet 3K and fold to a raise, like that feels awful. So like it's just,
well, it's because it's still the information bet. It's just twice as or 3 times as large.
That's what I mean. That's why it feels worse.
It's
like at least if you're going to bet, I think the reason for not betting 3K is specifically because you're not last to act, and because there is some universe here where you can just make a fold because crazy action occurs and you're just obviously dead, right?
Yeah. I think the big takeaway here is, first and foremost, I think it's damn near mandatory to 3-bet pre. 50 big blinds effective at the relatively early stages of an MTT. I don't believe this is the time to be trapping.
Just get the money in.
I think the biggest habit that people can get into is if they feel like they under 3-bet this formation, like under the gun one type of stuff, just get in the habit of 3-betting to like 4.5 or 5 big blinds, and just do it with a few more hands than you feel comfortable with. Like the second that you put in that 3-bet with 10-9 suited there for 4.5 bigs, you'll realize like how much more easy it is to navigate this scenario. Right? Because like you don't find the 4-bet coming from under the gun as often, and you don't see people fucking with you behind with a cold 4-bet or anything along those lines, right? Like you just don't want to get in the habit of like, oh, I'm too tight in my 3-bet in this formation, so therefore I'm going to expand my calling range with good hands.
Yeah. This is it's the old man coffee strategy of
which Landon loves because he's cringing over it. He's dying to speak.
I know that I don't 3-bet enough, therefore I'm going to.
Therefore, I have to trap more.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Go
I'm
ahead,
getting
Landon,
value.
go ahead.
Don't 3-bet 10-9 suited. Landon Kings is. I'm gonna give you a pass. It's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't do it very often, but I'm okay with this.
See,
I'm okay.
that's the problem though, is like you take these things that happen at a low frequency and say like, oh, I'm okay with this. But what you're not recognizing, you're like, this is the standard play. This wasn't a one-off. Like 3 out of 4 of them agree that the flat is good, which means that the flat comes through here way too often.
I don't know how long he's been flatting Kings versus Gun 8.
I think we should bet on who it was that didn't like the flat, and I think I know.
Who did not like it?
Yeah.
I'm sure Sean Deeb did not like it.
Yeah, that's going to be Sean, right? It's going to.
Oh, I would have guessed Weinman.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I don't know Weinman too well, so I'm
I
not
like
sure
that
about
they're
that.
like mystery. You know, like I don't know who I agree with like Chuck Shove flop being good. You know,
Right.
like when you said that, like
Yeah.
me, you, and the mystery member.
I think Deeb would be the one to check jam flop.
That seems about right to me. Yeah.
Yeah, if I had to guess.
All right. I'll take that.
Yeah, and I would guess that REA was the one who wanted the bet, and Weinman wanted the check call. That would be how I would move the
If
puzzle
I were-
pieces here.
In my brain, if I were to tier list the options, I would start with check jam being number 1, check call being number 2, bet
Number 3.
yeah, bet,
Check fold being 4.
correct. Bet being number 3. And the point of like why betting multi-way is very difficult and with hands like this is for the aforementioned reasons of 2 versus 8.
Yeah.
Where it goes check, like bet, call, close action, right? Because like after the button calls, the big blind, if they have a decentish hand, can call and close action.
Yeah.
And then sometimes their ranges on the turn are actually going to be stronger than in theory, because in theory, big blind might have turn leads
Right.
on some board pairing improves or like maybe some spades, you know, where in actuality it goes check, and now you let everybody see an extra card because you can't bet on a hand on like
Also,
an 8
for
of
what
spades.
it's worth, we didn't really discuss this option, but I think betting the turn might actually be very viable too. Like we have all the king queen. I guess we
It's
don't.
like-
I
I
guess we don't have king queen off.
I think you can do it like you can like block bet.
Block, yeah.
You
Like
can just like bet 3K again,
3 or
like
4K,
the button,
yeah.
like the button did.
Yeah.
And then like it just sucks when you get raised. But
I don't know,
you just deal with it.
you broke me.
you
I-
broke it at me.
I am gonna-
That's because you want him to flat pre.
I'm gonna
You
take
caused
that-
all
I
this.
want him to check jam the flop. I think that's sick.
I'm
I
gonna
think
take.
it's pretty good, like really good. It might be like super good because like queen 10 probably sticks it in with you and they shouldn't. Or like bad flush draw puts it in and they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I'm gonna run this on Rocket Solver. We're gonna run it 5 ways and we'll see.
All right, we're gonna come with some sort of solution here in the future.
The solver probably likes the king of spades.
So,
though.
the solver is gonna tell us this is a. You know, the solver's going to tell us some other crazy line. It's going to tell us like bet 1 big blind or something on
Right.
the flop.
on every street,
That'll
probably.
be fun.
Only
Yeah.
if it
Just
was,
saying
if it was
bet
a
'em.
bomb pot.
Biggest takeaway, in my opinion, make your life easy. 3-bet your hand pre. Don't worry about running into it.
Also, multi-way's hard.
Yeah, multi-way's
takeaway.
hard. Like that's a big thing worth avoiding. Like, you know, Landon doesn't want you to 3-bet the 10-9 suited.
Don't do that.
Quit being a pussy.
Versus gun 8? What are you, nuts?
Quit being a pussy. It's only 4 blinds.
Gun 8, bro.
You can't.
Gun 8.
You can't.
Gun 8.
10-9. What are we
Gun
doing?
8.
Gun 8. What are we doing?
It's terrible.
Fold your hand.
Landon's trying to make gun happen, just
Yeah.
like calling it gun.
Well, he's saying like under the read the hand history again from the start. Look how many unnecessary words existed.
You can't 3 exclamation point against gun 8.
The 3 exclamation points been gone. Wait, read it again.
I'm
He's
not
like
gonna read it
8-handed.
again.
I'm under the gun 1.
Bro, Glance is old. Back off him, man. He got us a coherent hand history. I'm proud of him. Okay? Thank you, Matt. We appreciate your contribution to the show. And
User submission.
We're going to give you an actual solver output at some point. But I think all of us come to the consensus of don't love the flat pre, whatever. It's okay if it happens.
We all do not.
All of us prefer checking on the flop.
Yes.
Sure. With the option to check jam.
Yes.
If we do choose to check call, then this turn jack, not really great for us. Probably
Check
want to
jamming's
navigate.
nice. And this is all, I mean, you're playing this from a chippy V perspective, right? Because it's pretty early.
yeah,
in the
it has to be
tournament.
pretty early,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just super early, like
Right. So there's no like ICM considerations.
no,
right?
not
Minimal,
going
yeah.
up substantially.
Andy's rich. Just rebuy if they got you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
you,
hit the
you won the $1
rebuy
million
line.
Right.
bounty. Just rebuy.
Yeah.
Ship it. All right. That's going to do it for Strat Chat. Thank you, Team Lucky. Please reveal which of you wanted to do what and let us know how accurate we were in our assumptions. That's going to do it for us today. Hunt, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Don't forget, we do have a merch line if you guys are interested in that. Click the pinned comment above. We also have 2 academies coming up in May. We're going to have the Cash Academy followed by the MTT Academy leading into the WSOP.
A few more seats just went, so they're going to go quick.
Oh, shit. They're flying. They're flying off the shelf. Academy.softwarewide.io. I'll be leading the Cash. Matt will be leading the MTT. We'll all be back for you tomorrow at noon Pacific. Be sure to join us then. We'll see you guys all tomorrow.
Peace.
Peace.